Catholic Connection is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tamio, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tamio.
And it's a Thursday morning. Great to be with you on a Thursday. It's February 27th, 2025. Gosh, so much to talk about, so many big stories. The good news is the Pope is doing a little bit better. We'll have an update from the Vatican on that, fresh out in the news. And then after the break, we'll be checking in with our good friend, Father Mitch Pacwa, of course, for our cultural connections. There's a number of different things I wanted to discuss with Father. It was great to be in EWTN land last week and to see Father in person. Was able to break bread with him a few times and chat about issues of the day. There's a lot I would like to discuss with Father Mitch, including this whole idea about what Catholic teaching says about work ethics and how that ties into some of the stories we're seeing today. And then we're going to explore a beautiful book, To Heights and Unto Depths, Letters from the Colorado Trail, written by Father John Nepil. And I'm excited about this book. And they had me at the foreword because the foreword is written by none other than the amazing Archbishop Charles Chaput. He is just still to this day, and I know he's retired peacefully and still doing some writing, one of my favorite teachers in the Catholic Church. Just so clear and so solid and so relatable. And so again, they had me at the forward of this book when I saw, Archbishop Chaput. Okay, there you go. But I'm also interested because there's a new trend, relatively new trend in travel. And it's called having transformative experiences. Now, we know nothing is more transformative than getting closer to God in any travel experience you may have, whether it be here or abroad, especially with many of you going over to my motherland, Italy, as I call it. And going for a long walk, going for hikes is also a big trend. And so this is what we're going to focus on with Father. Really looking forward to the discussion, To Heights and Unto Depths, Letters from the Colorado Trail. So there you go. That is our show for today on a busy Thursday morning. Let's take a look at the weather. Can you believe that March begins on Saturday? Yeah, March 1st. And then, of course, Ash Wednesday is next Wednesday. Rain and snow showers, according to the National Weather Service for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, increasing fire weather concerns for the plains. We have a system that's tracking, they say, across the Northeast, with a stronger system expected for this weekend of March. Snow accumulations expected for portions of the Great Lakes region and New England, and winds will also become gusty across most of the eastern two-thirds of the country this weekend. And the winds and low humidity may increase fire weather concerns for portions of the plains. So that's what the weather looks like across the U.S. of A. God bless America. Let's get started at almost 4 minutes past the hour. Again, it's a Thursday morning, and we're so glad you're listening to EWTN. Well, the Holy See Press Office saying this morning that the Holy Father slept well and spent the first part of the morning today resting. After breakfast, the Holy Father continued his treatment while settling in his armchair. He has been informed of the many initiatives to pray for him, and the Vatican says he remains in very good spirits. The Jubilee audience set for Saturday, however, has been canceled. And last night, the press office said the Pope's health condition had slightly improved over the previous 24 hours. They said the mild kidney insufficiency observed in recent days has subsided, and the statement also said a chest CT scan carried out Tuesday showed a normal progression of the lung inflammation. Blood tests conducted on Wednesday confirmed the improvement. Pope Francis also remains on high-flow oxygen therapy, but as of last night, he had not experienced any asthma-like respiratory crises. And prayer vigils, of course, continue with the Holy Rosary set for tonight, Thursday evening, 9 p.m. Rome time, in St. Peter's Square. And this time it will be presided over by Cardinal Baldassare Reina. The Democratic Republic of Congo continues to grapple with escalating violence. As Nathan Morley reports from Vatican News, tensions are reaching new heights this year. As a matter of fact, right around now, following the rapid advance of a rebel group in the mineral-rich eastern provinces.
The Prime Minister, Judith Suminra, told the United Nations Human Rights Council on Monday that a significant number of civilians were among the dead. Suminra warned that the security situation in the eastern DRC had reached alarming levels, noting around 3,000 deaths in Goma, the capital of North Kivu province. She added that more than 2,500 bodies were buried without identification, whilst another 1,500 remained in morgues. She said there was a significant mass of civilians who were part of these dead. Since January, the Rwanda-backed M23 rebel group has captured key cities, including Goma and Bukavu, the capital of South Kivu province. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has expressed concern, warning that the fighting could push the entire region over the precipice. Rwanda has denied allegations of supporting the rebels. Suminra called for global action and dissuasive sanctions on Rwanda amid mass displacement and reports of summary executions. She said it was impossible to describe the screams and cries of millions of victims of this conflict. For his part, the UN chief Antonio Guterres echoed the urgency, describing the situation as a deadly whirlwind of violence and horrifying human rights abuses. He further stressed the importance of respecting the DRC's sovereignty and territorial integrity and warned that the fall of more cities could lead to regional war.
A 20-year-long decline in the number of Americans who identify as Christian may be leveling off. That according to new information released yesterday by the Pew Research Center. Catholic news agency citing recent research from Pew, which explains its religious landscape study, showing 62% of U.S. adults identifying as Christian, a number that has been relatively stable since 2019. The number of U.S. adults claiming to be Christian is still significantly lower, however, than when the survey first began, falling 16 points over the course of the poll, from 78% in 2007 to the 62% most recently reported. Another big story we're following for you this morning, Karen Curtis tells us Attorney General Pam Bondi says she'll be opening up Jeffrey Epstein's files to the public, and that'll happen very soon.
You're going to see some Epstein information being released by my office.
Attorney General Pam Bondi telling Fox News she will be releasing files on the Jeffrey Epstein case as soon as today. She says, first, information about the more than 200 victims needed to be protected and redacted.
A lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information, but it's pretty sick what that man did.
Epstein pleaded guilty and was convicted in 2008 by a Florida state court of procuring a child for prostitution. He hung himself in prison after he was arrested again in 2019 in New York.
President Trump is set to welcome the UK Prime Minister to the White House today. It's his first meeting with Trump since he won the presidency again. The two are likely to discuss the war between Russia and Ukraine, which Trump says he wants to end. Trade is also expected to be up for discussion as Trump has been imposing steep tariffs on allies since taking office. President Trump, as Mark Mayfield tells us, did touch on numerous topics, meanwhile, during his first cabinet meeting of his second term.
On Wednesday, Trump said his administration is working towards an end to the Russia-Ukraine war and also mentioned tariffs against China that will soon take effect. The president promised any cuts to the federal government will not impact Social Security or Medicaid. He also praised the efforts of Elon Musk, who was in attendance at the meeting, to cut government fraud and waste.
And as you just heard, the president did discuss those looming tariffs during that cabinet meeting yesterday. The president adding that he still plans to issue 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada early next month, or actually early in April.
I was going to do it on April 1st, but I'm a little bit superstitious, so I made it April 2nd. The tariffs go on.
Trump said after the tariffs go into effect, Americans, he says, will see something that's going to be amazing. He also said he's slapping those 25% tariffs on the European Union soon, claiming the 27-country bloc was formed to hurt the U.S. Israel releasing over 600 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for the bodies of 4 dead Israeli hostages. The terrorist group Hamas giving the bodies to the Red Cross in Gaza overnight as part of the Israeli ceasefire agreement. Buses carrying the prisoners are later seen leaving a prison in the occupied West Bank. Last weekend, Israel delayed the release of prisoners because of the ceremonies Hamas was holding during the public handovers. And federal prosecutors, as Andrew Whitman tells us, say a Brooklyn man wired money to help ISIS.
Mansouri Manu Chekri was arrested Wednesday, charged with sending $70,000 to people overseas, including in Turkey, aimed at helping ISIS and ISIS-K. The FBI says Manu Chekri was living in Sheepshead Bay on a non-immigrant visa that had expired in 2016. Officials say they also found at least 2 jihadist videos and evidence he had possessed weapons. They say he sent a video of himself firing an assault rifle at a New Jersey shooting range with the message, "Thank God I am ready, brother." Manu Chekri's lawyer says he was sending financial support to orphans and widows.
A new Pentagon memo saying transgender service members will be separated from the military unless they receive an exemption. Earlier this month, the Pentagon says it would no longer allow those who identify with the opposite sex to join the military and would stop performing so-called gender transitioning procedures. Wednesday's memo said the Pentagon must create a process to identify those members within 30 days and will then have 30 days to separate them from the military. Those closest to the developments at the southern border say President Trump's get tough on crime approach there is working. The head of the Texas State Troopers says there has been a dramatic change in illegal immigration.
The numbers right now are the lowest that we've ever seen them. I think there's several days this week that were below 100.
DPS Director Freeman Martin says they're already planning on ramping down law enforcement at the border. Currently, there are troopers from all over the state on special assignment at the border. That, he told lawmakers, will be the first to end. And a couple from California facing federal charges on suspicion of turning illegal immigrants from Latin America countries into slaves. Daniel Martindale has that story.
Federal prosecutors say 50-year-old Carolina Rojas and her husband, 45-year-old Jairo John Gastello, provided several immigrants with documents to help them illegally enter the United States. Once they arrived, the couple allegedly forced them to do housework and childcare for free on a 24/7 basis. Rojas and Gastello are also accused of getting the immigrants false Social Security cards and other phony documents so they could get jobs outside of their home. Prosecutors say the immigrants would then be forced to hand over their pay from those jobs. Rojas and Gastello remain behind bars and could face decades in federal prison if convicted as charged.
The head of the National Transportation Safety Board blaming the pilot of that private jet for a near collision at Chicago's Midway Airport this week. The NTSB chief said it was the fault of the Flex jet crew, not air traffic control. Video of Tuesday's incident showing a Southwest Airlines flight close to touching down before pulling up as a smaller jet taxis across its path. The president also blaming the private jet's pilot in a post on Truth Social. An American company is picking back up the search for Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 more than a decade after it disappeared. The flight carrying 239 people vanished from radar not long after taking off from Kuala Lumpur Airport in March of 2014. The Malaysian government has given approval for Texas-based Ocean Infinity to resume the search for the wreckage. The company says it is focusing on an area it believes was overlooked in past searches. Some consumers and activists as well calling for an economic blackout. The idea is not to spend money for 24 hours as a protest against what they call corporate greed and companies that have pulled back on so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion. There are also calls for additional boycotts of companies such as Amazon, Walmart, and Nestle in the coming weeks. Jacqueline Carr tells us about a mystery that's been developing surrounding the death of Gene Hackman and his wife.
Police in New Mexico say Hackman and his wife were found dead in their Santa Fe home on Wednesday afternoon. Their deaths are under investigation, though foul play is not suspected. He won 2 Oscars over his 50-year career for The French Connection in 1971 and again some 20 years later for the Clint Eastwood film Unforgiven. Gene Hackman was 95 years old.
Colombian police have arrested a man who was allegedly caught trying to smuggle cocaine under his toupee. Police say the 40-year-old suspect detained Monday at Cartagena Airport, where he was caught trying to board a flight to Amsterdam with over 200 grams of cocaine packed in small bags beneath his toupee. Officials estimate the street value of the cocaine to be worth over $10,000, and they say that suspect has a prior criminal record, including 2 drug trafficking convictions. And finally, our news segment, almost 15 minutes past the hour on a Thursday morning. Tammy Trujillo tells us a new study from Bankrate is now focusing on financial literacy in America.
Analyst Alex Gailey says parents need to teach money matters to their kids.
What we found is that Americans who were exposed to a strong financial education during their childhood are more likely to have successfully negotiated raises at work. They're also more likely to practice healthy financial habits as adults, such as setting a budget or saving for the future.
Gailey says having a strong understanding of what it means to earn money helps you increase your earnings over time. She says 66% of Americans who grew up with a strong financial education have successfully negotiated pay raises during their careers. That compares with 39% of Americans with little or no exposure to money lessons growing up.
It is a Thursday morning, and that means Cultural Connections right around the corner with our very own Father Mitch Pacwa from EWTN, and we'll be right back.
This program brought to you in part by Ave Maria, Florida, a big kind of small town where golf carts take you everywhere and there's always something fun around the corner. Discover championship golf, resort-style amenities, and a town center full of shopping and dining. With Ave Maria University and Ave Maria Catholic Church at its heart, it's a community full of connection and charm. More than 25 model homes are available for viewing. More information can be found at avemaria.com. That's avemaria.com.
People ask how they can care for older family members who can't fully care for themselves. One answer is Visiting Angels, America's choice in senior home care. Visiting Angels assists adults nationwide with 600 locations to continue living at home and not have to move into a nursing home. Their caregivers provide assistance in hygiene, meals, and light housework. Services are provided up to 24 hours per day, and you can select your caregiver before service begins. More information, including franchise opportunities, is on the web at visitingangels.com.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
Have you ever been so grief-stricken and so heart-sick that you can't see God? You can't see God in the tragedy. You can't see God in that cross. You can't see God in that sick. Why? You're enveloped in that grief. You're enveloped in fear. And God is out the window. You don't see Him standing right next to you.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Underwritten in part by the following nonprofit.
Are you paying high prices with a traditional health insurance company that pays for things that violate your conscience? There's an alternative available. Solidarity HealthShare is a community of faithful individuals and families that never share into immoral medical services, all while saving you money with prices starting as low as $85 per month for singles and $512 for families. Never fund another abortion with your healthcare dollars. Call 844-313-4999 to learn more.
It's a Thursday. It's February 27th. Great to be with you, and always great to catch up with Father Mitch Pacwa. Really enjoyed spending time with him in studio last week and in the lunchroom. Had a lot of great conversation. And so we'll have some more conversation for sure, because he has so much good news and information to share with us. Father, it was really nice seeing you last week in person.
I enjoyed it too, and I just tried to not get into too much trouble. That's all I asked.
We had fun, broke bread together, and talked about the book on your show, which I greatly appreciate. Okay, so I always try to help people, and I know you do that so often. Every single time you're on the air, you help people understand what's going on in the world through a truly Catholic lens, which is what we do. And so I've been thinking a lot about the responsibility that we have. Everyone who works has a responsibility, and the Catholic Church gives us instruction on everything, especially in terms of what it means to be responsible at work. And I find it really interesting, actually jaw-dropping, let me be extremely blunt, that people are upset that some federal workers are having to respond in a day or two with 5 things they did on the job last week. I don't understand why that is so horrible. And when you look at the surveys, you look at the polling, most people, if you look at what the American people are saying for this, because we're paying for these jobs that the people who are being asked to respond, these federal workers, are saying, well, duh. I mean, if everybody has reviews from their employers, oftentimes you have weekly meetings where you have to weigh in, sometimes even more frequent. So what's the big deal? Why are people having such a problem with this, do you think?
I think there are a couple things. I have to admit, I'm a little bit concerned that some of the issue has to do with people who are paid by the government but have not really been showing up for work. And one of the concerns some of them would have is that they may not actually be doing a whole lot, and finding out that the government job is not all that significant. This is one of the things that a number of people don't want to let others know is maybe what I'm doing doesn't get a lot done, and there may be something else at stake in this whole issue. For instance, in some of the cutting of costs, we're finding out that some jobs may not be necessary. We're also starting to, some people are suspecting, and my own Chicago ears go up, with the idea that perhaps this is a shill, and that's going to be discovered that money is going to individuals or organizations for other purposes. This is an investigation that has to go on. Just my ears are perked. And so you've got a variety of concerns. And then, of course, there are some people who have a government job. They don't want to lose it, but it may be that there's not that much happening in the job and that you move papers from different parts of the office. Other people are doing very significant work. One government worker said about 10% of the people get all the work done. And the others criticize that one because it makes them look bad. Now, that's from one of the government workers. And, that should be investigated because, we don't really have great dignity. And this is one of the points I think we want to get to. Mm-hmm. Work has, a really good quality to it. There is a twofold aspect. One, our work should be for the good of others. Mm-hmm. I'm doing this job to help people. I may be a very small part of a large machine. My dad spent most of his life reading about World War II because he was a tiny little cog as a mechanic in the African campaign in the Army Air Corps. He wanted to see what was I part of, what was going on. And most of us are small little parts doing our little thing. But it's still significant service to others, without which the rest of it doesn't work. That's one very important thing. We contribute to society. Secondly, there is the dignity that comes from having integrity at work. I do a good job, and I keep learning how to do a better job. And I become a better person because I'm doing well. And that is an important thing. But if you are, and this is where I think the administration has concern, if you are not really accomplishing something that is truly important, and if you are wasting a lot of time to get a little bit done, that will affect your own dignity. The only thing that will cause real panic is, well, how will I live? I don't know how to do anything else. Okay, this may be a call to learn other skills. Let me ask you this, Teresa. Have you ever been fired from a job?
Oh, yes. More than once. Mm-hmm.
So have I.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not pleasant.
No.
And you have to figure out the next step. I never liked it, especially when I loved the jobs I had.
Exactly. But if you, as my mother used to say, offer it up, right? And right. You figure out, okay, it's part of redemptive suffering. Okay, God, I hate this. This really stinks. What do you want me to do differently? Show me mistakes I made. What can I learn from this, and how can I apply it? And once you get through the pain and the shock, then you go the next step.
Exactly. That I had to realize when I was a university professor, for a variety of reasons, I don't fit in quite so well at this particular place. And I lost my job. Or I was, you could see the writing on the wall. And I hated it. But the question then became, okay, Lord, what do you want me to do next?
Right.
What is your plan? It wasn't my plans, but I did have to deal with our Lord's plans. And this is something that you want to ask. What do I do? And that's very, very important as a Christian, but also as a human being, to have a sense, this is not the end of the world. And the rest of the world is not collapsing because I lose my job.
But you should also be able to explain what you do. If you love what you do and you know your job well, coming up with even a few things on a weekly basis, or meeting with your boss or having reviews. Shocker, this is the real world. The Catechism talks about this. We'll talk more with Father Mitch when we come back.
How did the apostles learn to pray? By observing their leader, the master of prayer, Jesus Christ. The Catholic Catechism reminds us that Jesus often drew apart, frequently at night on a mountaintop to pray in solitude. He includes everyone in his prayer, for he has taken on humanity in his incarnation, and he offers us all to the Father when he offers himself. By his human prayer, the Word who has become flesh shares in all that his brethren experience. He sympathizes with our weakness in order to free us. Thanksgiving precedes Jesus' prayer as in raising of Lazarus from the dead. Before the miracle, Jesus prays, "Father, I thank you for having heard me," which implies that the Father always hears his petitions. Jesus also reveals how to ask. Say thank you before the gift is given. This is Peggy Stanton, and this has been the Order of Malta's Minute with the Catechism.
Christ is the answer, with Father John Riccardo.
Here's the new challenge. At least 1 hour a week in front of the Blessed Sacrament, with the goal of an hour a day in front of the Blessed Sacrament. I had a guy come up to me and he says, "Father, I'm doing a lot of things. I'm in a men's fellowship. I pray with my wife every day. I go to Mass every Sunday and usually a couple times during the week. I read Scripture." He goes, "I want more." I said, "Do you pray in front of the Blessed Sacrament?" He said, "Outside of Mass, no." I said, "I think that's the more." See, all these saints, these are the ones who surround us. These are the ones who ran before us. These are the ones who fought well, who kept the faith. They would tell you, as would every single saint in heaven right now, you cannot run this race if you don't spend time with the Master. Whatever else we're doing, it's second, third, and fourth. First things need to be first. And the first thing is to be with the Master. And the Master is Jesus.
Welcome back, Catholic Connection on Thursday. Culture Connections with the one, the only Father Mitch Pacwa from EWTN. And we always try to help you, as my dear friend, may he rest in peace, Al Crest used to say, looking at everything through the lens of Scripture and the teachings of the Catholic Church. And we do that all the time with our very own Father Mitch. So, Father, I was looking at the Catechism, as I love to do, applying real-life stories and going into the Catechism and see what the Church has to say, because it has something to say about everything that affects us as men and women made in the image and likeness of our God. Paragraph 2427, human work proceeds directly from persons created in the image of God and called to prolong the work of creation by subduing the earth both with and for one another. Hence, work is a duty. If anyone will not work, let him not eat. Work honors a Creator's gifts and the talents received from him. So as Catholic Christians, if we're not doing our job, granted there's going to be days when we don't feel like working, we're going to have ups, we're going to have downs, but if we're not putting our best foot forward and using the gifts that God gave us, Houston, we have a problem. I mean, the Catechism is pretty clear on that.
Yeah, well, see, that's one of the other issues. There is something that is necessary. The world needs everybody to cooperate It's not just something that is about me feeling good about myself, though that is good, but the world needs people to do the work that is being done out there, because it's good to get it done, and we benefit from it. This is truly a duty, especially for those who have families. This cannot be underestimated. The role of taking care of one's family is absolutely crucial, and we all have to be doing that. But it's not only about our families and making sure we can afford latte in the morning before work starts. It's very much about, doing something that builds up the rest of creation. Now, in the government, there really is something quite special. The purpose of the government is the protection and service of people in the nation. This is a great gift that we need to have, but we also have to make sure that it's done responsibly. It's not as if, and I've seen this so many times. It seems that sometimes people can look at the government as this enormous fund, which it is. It's enormous. And then it doesn't matter if I spend it, forgetting that the people who pay the taxes are themselves giving up things in order to pay taxes. They can't. Right. They don't get to spend all of their money. It's always interesting to watch young people who get paid a certain amount, and then they get their check, and they see how much is taken out by taxes. It's a surprise to many of them. And the government workers, have to have a strong sense of responsibility to people who are paying significant portions of their wages. And the government doesn't exist for the sake of the government workers. See, if you need government assistance, then ask for government assistance. But, to say, well, you can't take away my job. Oh, yes, because it doesn't get anything done, or it doesn't serve the folks. Mm-hmm. It's not. It's make work. When I've heard since the '60s that the majority of money allocated to the welfare units of the government, because that comes from a variety of social welfare through a variety of parts of the government, and the majority of the money spent goes for the workers. It doesn't get to the people because of government. The government needs to have safeguards. It needs safeguards, and they spend a lot of money making sure this person is watching this person. That's an ancient problem. The Persians used to appoint 3 leaders for every province because they couldn't trust any one of them, and the other 2 were to keep an eye on the other guy. So this is an old problem, but we have to have that kind of responsibility. But when it gets out of control so that too large a portion of our taxes are going to workers who are just watching other workers and ensuring against fraud by other government workers, we have to say, wait a second, let's trim this down. And that means people are going to lose their jobs, but it also means that the rest of the society can prosper because they don't need to pay as much taxes.
Especially it's interesting. I was listening yesterday. I told you
towards bankruptcy.
Yeah. We are, and that's a very important point. I mean, with the trillions of money, which is a huge amount of debt for the United States. I was listening, as I always do, to different shows on both sides of the political aisle yesterday, and I heard some people call in, and they said they identified themselves as liberal, didn't vote for our current president. One woman called in, and she was great. She says, look, I've worked for the government for a long time. I'm proud of what I do. I have absolutely no problem with this. Nobody should have a problem with this. She says, I whipped out that email in 5 minutes of the 5 things I did in this past week. She said, big deal. We all have a responsibility. And she said, this woman is a self-identified liberal, and said, you would not believe the amount of people that don't come into work, that don't do their job, and that's why everybody is so upset. But she's someone who right out of the gate said, I'm not a conservative. I work for the government, but I'm proud of what I do, and I can explain what I do, and everybody else should be able to do the same thing.
Right. And the government workers do need to be protected against fraud by their bosses and other. For instance, I have a good friend, loved working for the government, and 6 months before his 25th year, he was fired, so they wouldn't have to give him his full pension. And he had served very, very, very honestly. There was the last thing he was very strict on, honesty in his job in the government, but that didn't matter. I was frankly furious. Of course, he was very hurt because he'd been loyal to his party and all that. But this is something that's the way he was treated. Now, that's wrong. And people should be protected against that kind of mistreatment. But the people who work for the government also need to have a clear sense of we have to be responsible to the taxpayers as well.
Yeah, if you can't come up with at least 5 things that you've done in the last week, Houston, we have a problem. Father, great to talk with you. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch up with you again next week on the first Thursday of Lent. Stay tuned.
And now, the EWTN Family Prayer with Father Joseph.
Family, a prayer that we pray together is a powerful prayer. So please pray together with me our EWTN Family Prayer. Today we pray for those who are suffering with Parkinson's disease. Lord Jesus Christ, consolation of the afflicted, you are our refuge. We pray for those who are suffering the effects of Parkinson's disease. As they lose their physical strength and abilities, increase their spiritual strength and abilities. Renew their inner spirit day after day, and through their share in your sufferings, give the grace of conversion to sinners. In their weakness, reveal your strength. Give peace and joy to those who care for them. Amen.
Dr. Ray Guarendi.
He's not on drugs. Parents will come into my office and describe a litany of trouble about this long. Then they'll say this: I'm giving you the wrong impression. Overall, he's a pretty good kid. How so? Well, he's not on drugs or anything like that. One of the new moral high bars out there, he's not on drugs. You want to raise a child not with the absence of pathology, but with the presence of virtue. She's miserable with me, but she treats everybody else great. Again, not the absence of bad behavior, but the presence of good behavior. He's not on drugs? It's a rationale. It may provide some comfort. It's not a path to virtue.
This is kind of a really cool, it's a very cool book, but I'm thinking about this during Lent when we want to go to deeper heights with the Lord. And this book, even if you can't go, let's say, on a pilgrimage, or you can't go on a huge hike somewhere incredible like the amazing Colorado Trail, which is what Father details in this beautiful new book from Ignatius Press. But I think this would be a great book to sit down and think about how we can stretch ourselves and go deeper, using the analogy maybe of a pilgrimage or a very long hike, maybe into the mountains or somewhere else. The book by Father John Nepil is To Heights and Unto Depths, Letters from the Colorado Trail. And Father, I was telling my listeners when I received the book, you had me at the foreword by Archbishop Charles Shapiro, because he's one of... Okay, done. Put a fork in me. I'm done, because that man, what a gift he's been to the Catholic Church. He's incredible. Incredible.
Thanks, Teresa. Yeah, he's amazing, and he, I've known him for a long time, and I asked him, and he said, "I'm not going to write this forward." He said, "I don't even like the mountains," and I was like, "Well, that's perfect." that's good. So he was great and very gracious to do that. But yeah, thanks. It's great to talk with you, especially in light of we were just talking briefly about your travel work and pilgrimage and kind of tying the book into these larger Catholic themes, which really are, I think, becoming more and more important in our industrialized and technological world. We recover humanity in a way through that.
Yeah, and I think it's very important, because there's this new trend I was telling you during the break, and you see this all over travel websites, where people want, and I actually just wrote an article about this for a secular travel publication, people want, quote-unquote, transformative experiences. They don't want to just go to whatever place they've chosen. They just don't want to go and check the site off their bucket list. They want to be impacted. Now, to me, that speaks of a longing in the heart, right, for God, even if they don't know it. But there's so many ways that they can do that. And so what prompted you to write this book based on walking the Colorado Trail?
Yeah, so the book is a long, it's got its own kind of long trail that came out of really in my early years as a high schooler, not a practicing Catholic, hated it actually, and was rejecting it, and then had a pretty massive conversion at 18. Then I found myself with this love of the outdoors, but trying to reconcile it with Catholic faith, because in Colorado, and it's like this in a lot of different places, they're opposed to each other. You're kind of institutionalized in the church, or you're finding God in nature, and then I started kind of thinking about that and reading about that, and then I became the chaplain at the University of Colorado when I was ordained at 27, and that's when it really kind of went into play. I'm working with high school or college kids, and I want to help them bridge that gap. I want to create a Catholic worldview that draws in creation instead of kind of dialectically opposes it to this hierarchical institution, which has been kind of maligned by our secular culture. And that was really, the book was born out of that pastoral experience those years. And then the occasion, of course, was walking the trail in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what was that like? Tell us about it.
Oh, man, that was amazing. So I grew up in Colorado. We have two things that you want to know about the landscape of Colorado. One is there's a through hike that's about the length of the Camino. And by through hike, we mean one trail that runs from Denver, and it just cuts west and south through the Rocky Mountains. You can walk through the whole Rocky Mountains. You end up on the other side of a town called Durango. Unfortunately, there's not a saint there. We need a church with a saint at the end of this thing. That's what we're missing. And then the other is these 54 peaks that are above 14,000 feet. And I started taking college kids up there and saying mass for them on top.
Wow.
And then, so the book kind of combines, the Colorado Trail is the narrative that threads it together. It's kind of a travel narrative with a lot of 14er stories. As we completed saying mass on all the 14ers, it kind of all came together in the last few years. And so I think the narrative is just fun. I think people enjoy reading it, but really the purpose of the book is to create a worldview around the incarnation as the key that brings together God, humanity, and creation. And the whole proposal is, if you lose the incarnation, you lose all three of those.
Right.
And we become secularized, we lose our humanity, and then we also lose creation in a deep way.
We're talking with Father John Nepil in his book, To Heights and Unto Depths, Letters from the Colorado Trail, published by Ignatius Press and a forward by the amazing Archbishop Charles Chaput. Now, at what point did you start reconsidering Catholicism?
I had they do these regional conferences called Steubenville conferences at Franciscan University, and that really saved my soul. I mean, that initiative in the late '90s was an absolutely magnificent, and it continues to bear great fruit. And I got paid off by some desperate parents to go to this thing, and had a very powerful experience meeting a priest who eventually got me to confession, who eventually got me in front of the Eucharist, and that's where I met Christ. And so my conversion was steeped in the sacraments, and that's why soon after that I felt a call to the priesthood to kind of serve in that way. And I talk about it in the book as well. So it's kind of a travel narrative, but it's also about a journey of conversion as well, which is still, of course, happening right now.
And one of the mistakes, and I'd love your opinion on this, that I think that people make when they go off, whether it be on a beautiful hike, a long, a short one, or they have, quote unquote, a transformative experience, they fail to bring it back home with them, and they fail to apply it because they dive right back into their life. So it's transformative for a moment, but not in the long term. And I know that's what Deacon Dom and I are always trying to do with people, is to say, you're going to have this experience, but it's going to continue. If you stay close to the Lord and you pray and you go back maybe in your mind or looking at your photos from this last experience, I always tell people on our trips to write things down, have a little God sentence, journal or whatever, because you need to take those experiences with you. It's not just for that moment, on the hike or on the trail or by the beach standing at the ocean,
Absolutely. I think a lot of self-knowledge and a lot of growth in the spiritual life happens in reflection, and I think that just the practice of writing is really important. And I kept a journal on the trail. I just wrote down just kind of graces, things funny. There's a lot of funny things that happen. So what we did was we didn't want to just through hike it. So I did it with 3 buddies, 2 who are now seminarians, 1 who I just did his wedding. But we invited every 4 days groups of young guys on the trail. So I reached out to priest friends. I said, bring some high school, college guys and join us for a section. And sometimes they were really ready to go. Other times it was a disaster. And so we had a lot of fun with that. But the keeping of the reflection, I think, is key because Christians, we really believe that God works through memory in a very deep way. And St. Augustine is part of this. Because what is the transformative experience? How would we translate that into Christian mentality? It would be a desire for an immersion in creation, but specifically creation as a gift. I want to experience a culture. I want to experience a location. I want to experience something, the giftedness that this didn't have to be. This is totally unique and beautiful and interesting and unlike anything I've experienced. But the mistake we make is if we don't have a deep Christian worldview, then there's no movement to gratitude because there's no giver of the gift, right? Mm-hmm. And that's so it loses that relational dimension, and then it flattens out. Then it just becomes one more thing, and then we're chasing the next transformative experience, and that's just very empty. I've lived that before. So.
And if you don't reflect, again, I think it's so important, and you move on to the next thing. And I think some people may do that because they don't want to reflect, because they may be afraid deep down of what they'll, come in contact with or with whom. I think that's part of it as well. Now, in terms of prepping for something like this, I mean, we're not talking like a brief hike in the woods. I mean, this is some pretty high places that you went to. What type of physical preparedness did you need before you went, along the Colorado Trail?
Yeah, so we walked for 30 days. It was 486 miles. It's about 90,000 feet up and 90,000 feet down to get through the Rockies. So it was a lot. So we started about 6 months before, and it was just a lot of walking. They call it rucking, so you got to pack on with weight, and you're just kind of walking. So I work at the seminary, and I spend my time with guys, and I was like, we're walking. So it's like January, and there's blizzard outside. I was like, we gotta ruck 5 miles while we do this formation meeting, and so just a lot of time on the feet, getting them kind of shored up, and then just trying to physically kind of get ready to go. And then there was a lot of preparation in terms of logistics and getting the right gear so that it's really minimal. Because unlike the Camino, you lead trips on the Camino, or do you just do Italy?
No, I've been. We stopped along the Camino once. We've never done a trip along the Camino. All of my trips are in Italy.
Italy, yeah. Well, that's a great place to do it. You don't have a place to stay each night. That's Camino's awesome because you got these albergues.
Right, because they have the hostels and the places and the towns and whatnot.
Exactly. Yeah, there's nothing. We would come into towns and we would resupply, but you're camping every night. It's all backpacking, and so it was pretty rugged. So we had to be ready to go. But it was a big 6 months of getting everything in order, and ended up being a great success. I get a lot of blisters. I have weird shaped feet, so that was one of the graces, was not getting blisters on this thing. So
one of the I think the reasons for doing this, and comment on this, I think this is what I'm getting from the way the book is laid out, is that this entire experience, from the preparation to the actual hiking and to the camping out and to roughing it a little bit, that's all part of that spiritual process and that transformative experience, is it not?
Yeah, that's what we were trying to not only communicate, experience in ourselves, but also communicate to these. We had about 50 or 60 young guys join us for different parts of the trail, and we're trying to give them that. We're trying to give them a transformative experience that leads to Christ. Because that's the mistake, is that we want experience, but we don't want to be we don't actually want to be transformed.
Right.
The reason why we don't reflect on our experience is because we don't want to change our lives. We don't.
Well, exactly. That's what I was hinting at before. Okay, we go, we see it, it's great, we check it off our list, but we're not going deep because we know what that might mean, or are fearful of what that might mean.
Yeah, the poet Rilke has this beautiful poem where he looks at this archaic torso of Apollo, this ancient sculpture, and he sees the beauty of it, and he says, "I must change my life." And that's a deep insight about what beauty does. Is beauty transforms us, but in a way it makes us want to become good, like the thing in itself. So the transcendental aspect of things, beautiful, goodness, truth, it calls us to change. But that's where, if we operate, the enemy of the transformative experience, the enemy is self-creation. That I take this experience and I make it my property. I make it part of and especially with Instagram and Facebook and such, which are all fine, but we can really use these things for our own ego instead of allowing the gift of them to call us to change, to live differently. Yeah. That's a truly transformative experience.
So, Father, this would be something, as I mentioned, I just think this is a great book for Lent. I mean, we're less than a week away of Lent. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The letters are short, 5 pages each. They kind of are bookended by the travel narrative, by the story, but each one has a real kind of theological nugget at the heart of it. And I think that I would just encourage people to get the book, and just each day, if you got 10 minutes, you can read a chapter, and it gives you an aspect of our incarnational worldview as Catholics to just really reflect on. And so this, Ignatius wanted the book to come out before Lent for that reason.
Right.
Because it does kind of almost like a Lenten meditation.
I think it's awesome. I mean, I love to travel. I will admit that I walk with my husband. I walk. I'm not much of a hiker. I did the Path of the Gods on the Amalfi Coast, and we took the route that required 1,500 steps before we even got to the beginning of the path. And I always say, if I weren't Catholic, I probably would have jumped off the cliff and killed myself. It was exhausting. And my husband and I, we exercise. It's not like we just got up and said, we're going to do this. I mean, we're pretty good at exercising and trying to keep ourselves in shape. But boy, I mean, the Colorado Trail, that to me is incredible. But I think the effort, once you do it, I mean, it's well worth it. But I think this is such a good analogy for our journey in life and for the journey during Lent. I mean, to heights, I think of the soon-to-be Saint Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati, right? To the heights, going into the mountains, which he always loved to do outside of Torino. So this is awesome, Father. I'd love to have you back on. I have a lot of other questions. We don't have enough time, but this is so cool. Thank you for this book, Father John Nepil, To Heights and Unto Depths, Letters from the Colorado Trail, recently released by Ignatius Press. A great book for Lent. We'll put a link to it on our archives section, again, published by Ignatius. We'll be right back.
Do you own popular index mutual funds or ETFs? If so, you're automatically own shares of companies that conflict with your moral beliefs. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. The experienced professional portfolio managers make decisions based on investment fundamentals and pro-life values. You can learn more about Ave Maria Mutual Funds today at 866-AVE-MARIA or visit AveMariaFunds.com.
Hello, Steve Ray here. We're going to Normandy, France in November to celebrate the 80th anniversary of D-Day. We'll also be in Paris for the opening of the resurrected Notre Dame Cathedral. Join us on a pilgrimage of discovery through the saints and shrines of France. Catherine Labourier and the Miraculous Medal, St. Therese of Lisieux, the incorrupt body of Vincent de Paul, a dinner cruise through Paris on the Seine River, and so much more.
Find the Ave Maria Radio travel tab at AveMariaRadio.net.
Italy aficionado Teresa Tomio's newest book is now out on the Ave Maria online store. In Italy's Shrines and Wonders, Teresa Tomio provides how best to navigate the most popular sites, best routes, and how to best to soak in all the beauty Italy has to offer. She also shares the most inspiring journeys to make your Italy excursion utterly unforgettable. Italy's Shrines and Wonders from Catholic Connections Teresa Tomio can be purchased at AveMariaRadio.net.
People ask how they can care for older family members who can't fully care for themselves. One answer is Visiting Angels, America's choice in senior home care. Visiting Angels assists adults nationwide with 600 locations to continue living at home and not have to move into a nursing home. Their caregivers provide assistance in hygiene, meals, and light housework. Services are provided up to 24 hours per day, and you can select your caregiver before service begins. More information, including franchise opportunities, is on the web at visitingangels.com.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate you at EWTN. Coming up tomorrow, of course, it is a Friday, so we are going to be looking at Fact Check Friday. Gosh, there are so many different stories, including, I'm trying to track this down, there's some testimony that was given this week by the new head of the FCC regarding Soros and the way they pushed through in the previous administration his purchase of some 200 stations. That's being revealed, plus some other interesting stories, of course, on a Friday. Ciao, ciao. Have a good day.
You've been listening to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomio. Catholic Connection is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Our producer is Andrew Kruchek. For copies of this program or for more information, visit AveMariaRadio.net. That's AveMariaRadio.net. Thanks for listening and join us next time for another edition of Catholic Connection.